Hello and welcome once again to Loveland's Talking. My name is Andy Hiller. I'm the Public Information Officer here for the City of Loveland, and we're here this month to share with you, the public, information about your city government. If you remember the movie Apollo 11 with Tom Hanks, I'm sure you remember the big line that came from that movie, Houston, we have a problem. Well, today on Loveland's Talking, we're going to paraphrase that a bit because here in Loveland, we have a problem. The good news is that while it's a somewhat significant problem, it's certainly not a life or death problem like the folks on that spacecraft were involved in. And again, unlike Apollo 11, we have a few months to solve this, not a few hours or a couple of days. Our problem is money. To some degree, seems like everybody has a similar problem. And of course, it's the problem with not enough rather than too much. I don't think that happens too often. So today we're going to talk about the budget gap that's expected next year and quite possibly in the coming years, the areas that this affects, how this has occurred, the challenges that are involved in solving this problem, and the process that's now underway to address all this. So to discuss this with me here today are two people who I'm sure you've seen here from time to time who spend a good portion of their working hours dealing with the city's money. John, would you introduce yourself?
John Hartman. I'm the city's budget officer.
And what does that mean?
That means I coordinate the process of putting the city's budget together and help in the management of it throughout the year.
Okay. Renee?
Hi, I'm Renee Wheeler, Assistant City Manager for the City of Loveland, and my areas of responsibility have to do with many of the administrative services here.
Including the finance department.
Including the finance department.
Okay. So we're gonna talk about being a bit short of money. How short are we?
Well, I'll take that.
Okay, go for it.
We are short, and I want to make sure that we understand we're talking about the general fund budget and not the total city budget. So the general fund, we are projecting a $3.5 million gap annually from 2012 to 2020. Want to keep in mind the perspective around what that number means. In the general fund, that's about 5% of our budget.
Okay, and I can't help but think that compared to what you read in the paper, 3.5 million doesn't sound so bad. It'd be nice if we were 3.5 million on the other side of the balance, but we're not. But just this last week, correct me if I'm wrong, the local school district was looking at about a $10 million shortfall. The state over $1 billion. Of course, Uncle Sam, it's the T word, a trillion. So 3.5 million by comparison is quite a bit less. But why is that so problematic? Can't we just go out and borrow the money? It seems like that's what everybody else does.
We don't borrow at the City of Loveland.
We pay it back.
We've taken a lot of pride,
Yeah.
quite frankly, in being an organization that doesn't rely very much on debt. We have very little debt out there. And I think one of the reasons that we have been so successful and that this gap is what it is, only the 5%, because City Council has been extraordinary over the past 10 years about making decisions and being fiscally conservative.
Okay. And unlike, as my understanding, unlike some of these other government agencies, we're required to balance the budget, correct?
It's both our charter and state law require us to balance our budget within our existing resources.
So we really can't, if the scale kind of looks like it is here in the graphic, we've got to figure out a way to level it out.
Correct.
Okay, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about here today. Let's look at a more graphic view of this. Here's a look at the revenue expenses. Again, this is just general fund, correct?
It's just general fund, and this is based on our projections so far, and it shows what we call a structural balance. Throughout the full term there, that the expenses are exceeding revenues. And so our challenge that we'll be talking about is how to flip that line.
Okay. And in a little more detail here, here's what you were talking about, Renee, the different types of funds that the city has. and it's really only the general fund that is significantly impacted by this. What are the other funds? Go from right to left and explain those, if you would.
The enterprise funds are what we call our business type activities. Generally, that's our water, wastewater, power, solid waste, golf. These are all operations of the city that are funded entirely by rates based on their usage. They don't receive any tax money.
I see.
The special revenue funds are funds that we have that have specially designated resources. An example is what we call our impact fee funds. These are fees paid by developers at the time they build and can only be used for capital, and the money is restricted for that use, so we can't use it for general fund operations.
Can't take it out of that checkbook and put it in the other.
Right.
Okay. Lastly?
Internal service funds, these are two areas where service provided is not necessarily to the public, but it's actually service to the city departments. And in this fund group is where we do our insurance benefits and risk for property insurance or workers' compensation, and our fleet operation, where we take care of the city's fleet.
I see. Okay. So that brings us to the general fund. Let's take a look. We've talked about the others, what it is not included in this budget gap. Let's take a closer look at what likely will be. Here's the list. To my mind, these are kind of the things that people most frequently think about when they think about city government services and functions.
It's often most of the most common services that people think about, other than getting water out of their taps or turning their lights on, yes.
Right. And these are generally funded by tax money, as opposed to like the water and lights, where if you use the water and lights, you get a bill and you pay directly back to the utility company for that.
Some of these general fund services do charge fees and services, but they don't fully recover their cost, and so all of these receive some tax funding.
Okay. So we're a bit short of money here. The next question would be, why?
Well, a number of things, but primarily you could say it's a function of what's happened with our economy.
Okay.
When the housing bubble burst, we saw a significant downturn in building activity, both on the housing side and on commercial construction. At the same time, with the layoffs and other things that have happened, there's less discretionary income, and so we've seen our sales tax revenues drop because consumers aren't out in the market like they were.
Don't have as much to spend. Okay. Let me go back to number one here and have you explain that a bit. Just because houses and shopping centers aren't being built, why does that affect the city's revenue?
Well, one of the taxes that we have is sales tax. We call it a use tax on building materials. So all building materials purchased to construct within the city, we get a tax on at the same rate as sales tax, a 3% rate. So our use tax revenue is down considerably. At the same time, any building project, we need to run through a building permit and inspect, and so our building permit fees are down at the same time.
I gotcha. Okay, well, Renee, I'll ask you if you would to explain how property tax falls into this.
Well, many of the property values are actually decreasing. That news has been in the paper for some time, the county, when they did their assessments. Loveland's been holding strong. We're pretty level for the current year, but we're anticipating about a 4% decrease the next cycle.
So if the value is less, the amount of tax we receive on it is less. I suppose to some degree that's good news to the individual homeowner, but collectively not so good to the city's pocketbook.
Yes.
Okay. And at the bottom here, revenue from the state, so we're probably getting less from the state as well?
Well, as we've seen in the paper, the state does have their own budget issues to deal with. One of our big revenues that we get from the state is for maintaining our streets using the Highway Users Tax Fund, which is collection of several different taxes and monies at the state level, but they share it back to us. Given their issues, though, we anticipate that the amount they'll share with local municipalities will be going down.
Gotcha, and everybody else, the school district, schools, et cetera. Last line on there, what does that mean exactly?
We're bringing on some new amenities. We've just completed the Chilson Center expansion. The library is in the middle of expanding, and those new buildings and new parks that have come online all come with new operating costs that we didn't have in the past.
I see. So our expenses are creeping up a little bit because we've expanded the...
And within our capital program, our other future, as we move out in time, we have future building coming on as we move through our capital program that will also come with its operating cost that works into the expense projections down the road.
Okay. Well, if that's the problem, I know you folks and a lot of community members as well are working on a solution, but you guys kind of set some ground rules in looking at this. Would you explain what these items mean?
Well, number one, and maybe the most important, is that we don't want to use one-time kind of resources or one-time decision-making. That would mean using money that we would only receive in 1 year to put toward operations that have an ongoing nature, because all that does is push the problem out. It might solve it for the 1 year. It also involves making expense reduction decisions that are maybe only a one-time decision. An example would have been something like furloughs. That's not something that you do year after year after year, and so it's a one-time decision that balanced the budget in 1 year, but you've left your problem out there in the future years.
Okay.
We don't want to use any accounting gimmicks. There have been governments that have moved expenses between years, right toward the end of the year, the last month. Some of that has been in the paper. We don't want to use accounting gimmicks. We want this to be straightforward, transparent, and work on the service level. And then, of course, the ultimate goal, align the expenses with the revenues for the foreseeable future, not just the next year.
So it strikes me, this may be a little out of character because you're not doing something to solve an immediate problem with the one-time thing, and you're not kind of doing an end run with the books to solve it. I mean, we're government. We have a reputation to maintain, to do those things. This looks like it's a worthwhile long-term plan you're seeking. I'm making light of this, but is that fair to say?
Our ultimate goal is that we want to be financially sustainable for the foreseeable future, and that means making a different kind of decision-making than has been done in the past to some degree.
Well, go ahead.
Here's our challenge, too. We really need to take care of the talent that runs this organization, that operates this organization, from the meter reader to the city manager. And to do that, you have to compensate them fairly in the market. Because if you don't, they're likely, as the economy starts building back up again, to find another job somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some extraordinary people here. So we're looking for an ability to be able to make sure that we can compensate that talent all the way through the next 10 years.
Good to hear. Good. Thank you. Okay. Well, so you have begun you've laid out a process to address this. Let's kind of take a look at the steps in that process. Start us off, if you would, John.
Well, our first shot, we had to lay out, do the process development. What is that?
Okay.
Next step is data collection. You have to know what are all the services and work on developing what's the importance of all of those different services. So we've done a service inventory, had the department heads all did a service inventory to start that, and again, working on what are our revenues coming in, all of this different data, working, and then we'll carry on to gather more data down the road.
And we've assigned groups that will study specific issues. Is there an opportunity to create additional revenues within the existing fee structure? Are there opportunities to cut back expenditures in some places? So we've assigned specific topics out to employee groups. In addition to that, we had an employee survey on our intranet, and we had over 165 ideas submitted by those employees. So we're in the process of synthesizing all those ideas and seeing what we can put into place from the employee's perspective. And we had a wonderful series of meetings with a public forum, a group of citizens. Some of them were boards and commission members, others were just interested people from the public, and then there were invitees from the city council. So that group got together and we defined the problem much like we're doing here today. And then we had them identify for us what was important with regard to budget balancing strategies. And they gave us some feedback on that. We also are doing some online surveys with the Leadership Loveland group, not only the current class, but all the alumni. The Chamber Board and their legislative committee are responding to that. The League of Women Voters are also responding to that for us. And then the accountability committees at the school district are responding. So we hope we have a pretty good representation of the demographic in our community to give us some ideas about how they feel about some of these budget balancing strategies as we go into the next process. The City Council has also taken a preliminary look at a priorities survey to get us started in that direction. And then let's not forget that we all went through a very painstaking process to identify what a 20% cut would look like as we were anticipating what might happen if last year's ballot measures would have passed. So we have all those ideas in the pool as well. So the challenge at this point is synthesizing all those ideas and coming up with some real meaningful options for the council to consider.
I see. So the strategy is being developed, and the council then will consider it and make an approval. And our next slide here kind of shows on a timeline where we are on this. So folks will be watching this show during the month of March, and as you go forward, all of this will continue.
Absolutely. And council did a wonderful job of identifying 6 principles for us. We use those as a yardstick to evaluate all these ideas that come in. So that synthesis process that I was talking about, there are a set of criteria to judge those ideas. So that's going to be real helpful, I think, as we put those options together.
And I've got to think it's really valuable to the community that such a widespread group has been working toward this, as you described earlier. It's not just council people or city staff, but basically people from throughout the whole community, both on the individual and business sections of the community as well. So hopefully that will, a lot of ideas go into that pot for that synthesis that you're talking about.
And I want to give a lot of credit to our Citizens Finance Advisory Commission. They're a group of 9 people who have really been devoted to hosting these public forums and then bringing a summary to council about what they heard in those public forums. So they'll be helping us all the way through this process as well, making sure that the citizens' perspective is represented.
Okay. So is it fair to say there aren't really any specific answers or suggestions right now, but you're kind of, everybody's kind of thinking about this and working toward it, and the process will continue?
That's very fair. There's a lot of great ideas out there, and we're going to do the best we can to bring something that works for a majority of the community.
Okay. So sometime, John, were you going to say something? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So based on this, as we get into, as the weather continues to get warmer, we will learn more and more about this, and quite likely some specific recommendations will be made, and then lastly some decisions will be made as we get toward school ending in the summer.
Absolutely, and we encourage the public to watch for those meetings. Most of them are going to be in study session environments, and that's every other Tuesday to the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays, and certainly tune in to Channel 16 like you are now.
Yep.
And or come to council. And we'll be having a wide variety of meetings, and we're interested in what the people of this community have to say.
Good, good. And I'll just make a plug here for a couple of things in order to see this. Number one, all the council meetings, whether they're the regular meetings or the study sessions, not only are they shown live, but they're repeated a few times over the next couple of weeks. And in the last few months, you can, even if you don't have Channel 16, because if you don't have Channel 16, you wouldn't be seeing this now. However, you can, on demand, so to speak, go to your computer and go to the city's website, and there are videos of all those meetings that now you can stream and watch the replays of those meetings.
Including those public participation meetings Renee had mentioned earlier when we met with the group in developing those ideas that came out of them. Those are available as well.
Good, good. Okay. Well, anything else you guys want to add before we call today?
It has been and will continue to be a very interesting process, but I think it'll bode well for the city down the road as far as our future financial condition.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more that the most creative solutions that can be implemented come when you have all the people at the table.
Good, good. Okay. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in and kind of figuratively being at the table for this discussion. We will see you again next month on Loveland's Talking. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.